order. Please rise and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Alicia, will you please do roll call for us?
Yes. Jamie?
Present.
Kevin?
Here.
John?
Here.
Jason?
Here.
Myself here, and Donna. Here.
Thank you, Alicia. Announcements. The next school board meeting, the next regular school board meeting will be on Monday, May 13th, 2019 at 7 p.m. in the GSL High School Community Room 443-444. Acknowledgements. Are there any acknowledgements at this time?
We do have a couple of acknowledgements, and I'm sure that our reports are probably stealing the thunder of some of them. But I want to congratulate our state speech kids. Not only did they take 11th with as a team, and they were an eyelash, from what I understand, away from being 4th place, but we also had a state champion in Anthony LaPlante. So that is really, really cool to see. And also would like to acknowledge our Knowledge Bowl team. They didn't win the state championship this year, but they had 2 teams in the top 9. We had a 4th place finish and a 9th place finish. Impressive from both for there. So those acknowledgements, I want to make sure that get out. So congratulations to them. Sorry if I took your thunder away a little bit, but.
Any other acknowledgements at this time? I'd like to acknowledge, hopefully I can knock on wood, and hopefully we are through the winter now and spring is finally here, but I'd like to acknowledge Chris and Matt, Mr. Sanju and Mr. Foss, for hopefully, like I said, getting us through a winter here with making decisions on late starts, early dismissals, cancellations, and so forth. It's not an easy job to do as a superintendent. It's one of those things where when you have a district this large in size geographically, the weather on the north side can be different than the south side, different from the east side to the west side. So I'd like to acknowledge that, like I said, hopefully we got through this winter, and I'd like to, like I said, acknowledge Mr. Foss also for the decisions that he needed to make last week in Mr. Sanju's absence. Some tough decisions, and once again, I think the proof in the pudding is that all of our students and staff and families have been safe during this winter of travel. So thank you to each of them. I'd also like to acknowledge Mr. Schwartz also in the accommodations and the work that he did in the decisions last week with regard to the speech team and the robotics team, or the Knowledge Bowl team, I should say, and the speech team. They needed to do some traveling and stuff for their competitions, and Mr. Schwartz did a nice job in helping make accommodations and work together to make sure that those students, staff, and families were also safe in their travels for their competitions. So I'd like to acknowledge that as well. Any other acknowledgments? Public input relating to the agenda. If there's any public input relating to the agenda, please step up to the podium, introduce yourself. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kay Wilson, and I am the 7th through 12th choir director, guitar teacher, and musical director. Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to address you. I would like to urge you to reconsider the reduction of the junior senior high music position at GSL. While it is never easy to make cuts, I would be remiss if I did not strongly object to eliminating general music from our junior high course offerings. Self-confidence, self-esteem, self-worth. 3 amazingly important things to instill in our students. These are 3 things that being in music helps our students attain. By teaching them to feel comfortable singing, performing, and just getting up in front of a large group of people, we can help them discover their self. The general music program at GSL incorporates learning, using, and performing new and different instruments such as ukulele, bucket drumming, recorders, exploring styles of music, many different genres that are ever changing. General music students get to explore where music came from and how it has evolved, where it is going. Where else will they get this experience? Seldom will you see young people without their phones on them and without them listening to music. General music helps them become listeners that are more discretionary. It can cultivate a better appreciation for all art and music while teaching them new styles and genres. While you may argue that not having general music is not an life-altering decision, I argue that having well-rounded, self-confident young people is life-altering. Losing any part of music in our schools could keep some of our students from having this life-changing experience. General music used to be offered to every 7th and 8th grade student at GSL, every single student. In about 2008, the decision was made to not require general music for every 7th and 8th grade student. The Minnesota standards for music are not being met for these students. In fact, the 7th and 8th grade students in band and/or choir are not learning about music history, music analysis, composers, composition, music critiquing. That is not part of our curriculum. So I ask you, how will the Minnesota music standards be met? Are we willing to accept below average from our students? Are we willing to accept that they don't get this knowledge? Are we willing to give up concerts and time from our band and choir programs in order to try and meet these Minnesota standards? Thank you.
Well, good evening. Thanks for letting me speak tonight. My name is Carrie Canut, and I am an elementary music teacher at GSL. And I'm here tonight to just add to what Kay put out there, but also to just go back in time a little bit. Our GSL music department has spent lots of hours putting together a curriculum that tries to encompass everything that the Minnesota standards have given us. With the proposed cut, all that content that we've allowed for 7th and 8th grade to take would be needed to absorb in our lower elementary. And I'm not sure how that's going to work. We see our kids on average 2 times a week for 50 minutes, and a week only, and it's nearly impossible to take the content that we would put in the 7th and 8th grade and try to bring it down into the lower levels. If you look at in the past, when I first started here, which is 24 years ago, we were seeing our students 4 times a week in the elementary, which was awesome. We really got a good, strong foundation at the lower level. But now, we went to 3 times, now we're at 2 times a week. So we've already had to make quite a few cuts on what we could cover. So that ripple effect has gone all the way through from, starting back at kindergarten and changes we've made to now. If 7th and 8th is taken away, we're just not sure how that's going to, what impact that's going to have, and it's detrimental effect what's going to be going down. So if at all possible, we'd like to be able to keep that part of our program. So thanks for your consideration and supporting our music program.
Second call for public input relating to the agenda. And third and final call asking for public input relating to the agenda. Okay, thank you, Kay. Thank you, Carrie, for your comments to the board. We appreciate that. Reports and presentations. We've got Shanda Landis and the Youth Art Month presentation. So Shanda, welcome.
Welcome.
Andrea as well, welcome.
And it's, yes, Andrea as well. We are a team. We are it. K-12 Visual Arts Program. So thank you for having us here tonight. We are going to come up to the presentation card. In front of you, you have a little pile. And just to go over that briefly, there is the Youth Art Month program. There is the Youth Art Month proclamation. And there are some highlights. And then there's Commissioner Ricker's address that you will get to, you have it in print, and then you'll get to hear it in a little video clip. So I'm going to hand it over to Andrea, and she will be presenting and highlighting our elementary kids. And the kids that are here, we will be asking them to stand, and some of them have written out essays, what art means to me, and how the visual arts have contributed to my life. So,
Hello everyone, I'm Andrea Wiggern. I teach elementary art K through 6 here at GSL. And these are slides of the Capitol show, which included 2 components. One was the Youth Art Month flag competition, and here we have the elementary students on the left-hand picture who participated in the flag competition. We had 3 of the 4 winners from GSL, so that was a pretty incredible year for us. And in the lower right-hand corner are 3 of the 4 participants in the other half of the Capitol Art Show, which was a K-6 art show where the art teachers across the state of Minnesota select artists and their artwork to represent their school. So here are our winners. We had a first place winner, a second place winner, and an honorable mention winner, all from GSL. First place went to Natalie Ackerson, and her design was actually made into a flag. And she had a little statement that she read at the Capitol too about what art means to me, and she couldn't make it tonight, so I'll read it on her behalf. She wrote, "I think art means music, rocks, crayons, paper. Art can be anything. I like to draw and paint. Personally, art means creativity. You basically can draw anything with a pencil or crayon or colored pencil. You can even make art with rocks. But art means to me creativity." And she's a 4th grade student up at GSL Lakeside. We had a second place winner, Abby Schauer. And we had a honorable mention winner, Abby Kaczmarek, all 4th graders at Lakeside. And we had 4 students, 2 6th graders and 2 5th graders whose artwork was on display at the state Capitol Art Show. Spring Grazing by Samantha Matson, a 5th grade student at Lakeside. Her work was there. Mystical Morning by Haley Robb, another 5th grade student. And 6th grader Luke Schmieg had the HMHS Britannic artwork there. And Autumn Sheik had Life to the Living Self-Portrait on display at the state capitol. All right, and Shanda will do the 712.
All right, and I'm happy to be able to recognize Tegan, who is here tonight. And Tegan, if you want to go to the podium over here, and we'll allow you to say your little speech, and we'll just leave that over here.
Art to me is a way to put mental thoughts into visual form. It is a way to show more than words can. A vision you cannot share with any other way can be shared using art. So now this vision can be understood and make it easier to work with or simply think about. This can work for emotions too. Art makes it easier to express and deal with different emotions that you want to spend more time on or get out of your system. Sometimes it is the other way around. A piece of art may imbue you with mental images and emotions. A gallery is a place where you can look into someone's mind. You can see how their brain works and empathize with them. Art is pure thought visualized and is very important to me.
Oh, got it. Thank you. So thank you, Tegan. It was wonderful having her at the Capitol, and she was a brave soul to get up there and give her statement. And it was made into a flag and on display. And there she is reading at the podium. She also had artwork contributed, and I chose her work, one of the 7th grade pieces that was drawn in class. And then we have Megan Becker here tonight, who was the 2nd place recipient of the flag design. So come on up, Megan, and read your spiel.
What art means to me. Art means so much more than putting paint on a canvas or lead on a piece of paper. It's about showing your thoughts and feelings. On great days, you might draw a sunny day on the beach. On not so good days, you might draw a rainy day. Even when you're coloring, you might use bright colors on good days and duller colors on not the best days. Sometimes on bad days, you might draw flowers in a meadow on a sunny day to make other people's days better. So you see, art can express thoughts and feelings or make days better for lots of people.
Thank you, Megan. And then we had Marisol Ignacio, third place, an appropriate flag design for this winter in Minnesota. And if to further explain, the flag designs, there's one flag that travels to the national conference, and this happened to be the high school year. Another year it'll be middle school, another year it'll be elementary. So the Tegan's was a postcard, and Natalie's for the elementary level was a poster, and those are on the little display board over there. And then we had Mitchell Peñas was the fourth place winner. So congratulations to our 7 through 12. And Elise was our Future Art Educator Spotlight Award, fourth place recipient, and she was planning on being here, so I'm kind of surprised she's not here. And she had to go through a process. I nominated her. She was interested in being an art educator. She had to write an essay and turn in all of her credentials and get letters of reference and all of that, and then was judged, and she received a $50 gift certificate. And our second place flag design winner was Abby Maunu. And then Carly Major, who I think was gone from school ill today, had her work contributed to the show. And then to kind of finalize, one more thing that I had in the pile I wanted to just make reference to was there is a packet of the new standards that are coming out, and they are a standard for each grade level. Unlike what this grade band has been, because there have been students that have not been in art at all in 7th and 8th grade. And so when the new standards come in, they're going to need to be in art for each grade level to get those standards. So that was just a little side note. And then we'll kind of finish up here with Mary Catherine Ricker was the guest speaker, and I think that she sums it all up very well. So whoopsie. I had this queued up. Thank you, Mike. And now we'll see if our volume is good.
Thank you so much for inviting me to speak with you today. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh.
Thank you so much for sharing your art, for sharing your talent
This
with
is
the state of Minnesota. We are a better, more beautiful place because you have put art into our lives. So thank you, artists here, and all of the artists.
I think I figured it out. It's there, but no.
I am so happy to meet you.
Sorry. We had this figured out, supposedly. Thank you.
I am so happy
Okay, well, thank you very much for giving us the time tonight to highlight some of our students. And that concludes. Just thank you. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Shanda. Thank you, Andrea, for the work that you do with our students each and every day throughout our system. It's greatly appreciated. And also, I'd like to thank Tegan and Megan also for not only the beautiful visual arts that you shared with us, but also the art of writing and the art of speaking before this scary group of folks here at the table. We'd like to thank you and the families for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us this evening to share with us the work that you've done. And very much we're proud of you for the work that you've accomplished here at GSL. So thank you. Once again, please join me in clapping for them. All right, administrators and committee reports. We'll start. Ms. Sander, do you have a report for us this
No,
evening?
I'm just going to pass because of my items being on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Freitag.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
It's fun to see the students that we had in our past at Lakeside. Congratulations, ladies. As I go through tonight's summary, this is actually the report that Mr. Butler had put together, so I'm going to have some additions as well. If we start with the K-6 Instructional Leadership Team, Lakeside has met on April 9th, and then Lincoln looks forward to meeting on April 22nd. But we meet as a K-6 Instructional Leadership Team to address kind of our targeting from Minnesota's Department of Education for the North Star Report. So actually in your packet, I believe you were given something that is titled K-6 School Improvement. And then with that, Carrie Glazer, myself, and Taylor, and Chris have gone down to MDE about 4 to 5 times this year in research of what we are deemed for the North Star Report. So what we're targeted for. If you look at the actual top of it, it will tell you exactly where we are in the report, why we have been flagged. We are targeted for stage 1 EL students because our EL students haven't met or exceeded the standards in both reading and math. And then we're targeted stage 2 for EL students because of they haven't shown an average amount of progress as much as we would want in reading. And we've gone through this. I had introduced this at the beginning of the year as well, but to remind you, our EL students are making progress on the WIDA access test that shows growth specifically in language. But our students aren't making as much gains when you look at the MCAs, and they're not closing the achievement gap as quickly as we had hoped. So this is the process that Minnesota Department of Education has put together, and it coincides along with our World's Best Workforce Plan. And so when we've gone to MDE, we've brought back that information and met with our K-6 site teams. And what we do is we identify what the root cause is. And you'll see that we've identified 2 specific root causes. The first one is English learners have not shown proficiency in academic English as shown by the achievement gap on the MCA reading assessment. And this is something, again, that K-6 site team identified. And then our second root cause is that the lack of staff awareness of culturally and linguistically diverse students and their culture and how it impacts their learning. And so then we went back to MDE, and then they give us these evidence-based practices that we can now implement within our district and in our buildings to support our students. So we have 2 different evidence-based practices. The first one is structured productive language opportunities. And this is something that with our new Wonders curriculum, we're doing specifically, but we've also been given some other best practice research areas of improvement that we've implemented. Back in March, we actually have a staff development day that we introduced a lot of these things, and our teachers have been implementing them in their classrooms since then. Then the second one is culturally relevant pedagogy. And for this one, this is going to be both of them are going to be a 3-year process. but this one in particular is something that we have to understand. We have to go slow to go fast in the end to make sure that we're understanding and implementing it. So our K6 site team, and I point to Carrie because she's on the team with me, we actually have a book that we are investigating and we're reading, and we are doing a book study with an actual class where we learn about it and how to implement, and then we bring it back to our teams. MDE has been, I think, spot on this time, and it's been very beneficial for us to go down there and learn. And our next one is actually in June, where we'll take our MCA results, even though they won't be formal. We'll take what we have at that point and then analyze them and look at what we should be doing next year and what we've done that's been very successful. That was a lot of information. Any questions about that particular piece?
A quick question. Can you repeat one more time how are the students doing on the access test, and then how are they doing in comparison with the MCA?
So our access test, what we had noticed that our students are really progressing well and doing quite well, but it's not transferring over into either Tier 1 or into what's happening in the MCA tests.
So is part of the dilemma then that if they're doing well on the access, that's the testing that would exit them from programming. So if they're doing well on the access testing, therefore kind of exiting the ELL programming, then they're back in the regular ed classroom without the ELL support to then be expected to be performing well on the MCA testing. Is that kind of painted correctly?
You are spot on.
Must be an elementary teacher, huh?
Responsive education is going to help us tremendously. It's brain research, understanding how we can work with our students, best practices laid out. It's a wonderful book, Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain.
Thank you.
Then I'll go on to the rest of it. We actually have Don Consimi is coming back from Wonders again for another training in May, and our teachers are very excited about it. It's been very cool to watch teachers who were very excited at the beginning of the year, but then, oh my gosh, how am I going to get all of this in? Now coming around to see it's making a lot more sense. They're understanding it, and they're still excited about the program. Going down a little bit farther with our PBIS, Lincoln's all-school meeting is on April 30th, and then those students for trimester 3 get to do burgers and bowling. You'll have to wait until the June school board meeting to hear what Lakeside's got planned, because it's kind of a big deal. And we keep ours on the down low, so the anticipation is really high. Actually, staff don't even know about it. It's really a big deal. And then going down a little bit further, we started MCA testing at Lakeside on April Fool's Day. April 1st, and it's gone so well. Thank you so much to our IT department for supporting us, and all of our testing proctors and all of our teachers for their flexibility. And the students have done a phenomenal job, but really the technology piece has been superb this year. Minnesota Reading Corps, Lincoln has been not granted a 1.0 position. Lakeside has been granted a halftime position, which is similar. It looks like Lincoln's got an interview on Wednesday, on April 17th. And then flipping to the backside, Bill has an acknowledgement for Mary Christensen and Jane Kleckel in a conference that they had attended in Alexandria. And I'd just like to thank all of our staff for everything that they've done in MCA preparation, the dedication K6 for the literacy program that we've put in, and the dedication and time that our teachers put forward for all of the committees that we have in place. We really ask a lot of them, and they do it with smiles on their face and dedication and the love of learning and the love of our students. So thank you to all of you. Are there any questions before I hand it over to Matt?
Thanks, Joy.
Good evening. So I'll get started. I always start my school board reports with school improvement and kind of what we're doing at the junior high, senior high level. We've talked about this before, but we're continuing our professional learning communities, or our PLCs, happen weekly. They take place on Fridays. We do many things during this process, but some of the most important things that I find are identification of our at-risk students. We get together and speak about what's working in some classrooms and maybe what's not working so well in other classrooms. And also discuss some differentiation to instruction that we can do or that may have worked to meet the needs of those students. This really ties into the RTI model that we had training for on March 11th. Greg Kushner came in from Solution Tree programming, and with the junior high staff and the senior high staff, we're going to make a push these last couple of months to start working on some of our RTI models and powering our standards and working on some of our learning objectives. And what I'd like to do, and I need to have some conversations with Solution Tree as well as with Michelle here, is look at the possibility of bringing Greg back again in workshop week to kind of revisit the work that we've done since March and where we are in August getting ready to implement that with our students for the 2019-2020 school year. The other thing that we're doing for school improvement is our PBIS program. I had mentioned to you at the last board meeting that we are at the end of our 2-year cycle, so we no longer have meetings that we go to Mankato for. They're kind of follow-up meetings to make sure that we're on task. We are now done with that, so we are on our own to sustain PBIS at the 7-12 level. The last meeting that we had, we kind of discussed how is this going to work to continue with our PBIS and continue with fidelity. And what we've talked about is breaking into subcategories of our PBIS committee, and that would include our Swiss, data entry, and infinite campus alignment. One of the key things with PBIS is data, and are we seeing improvements behaviorally, and are we seeing improvements academically? The problem has been, up to this point, is we've been utilizing a program called Swiss, which is completely separate from the program that we use 7-12 to keep track of our behavior, which is Infinite Campus. So we've been working with our IT department and Jeff Jensen to basically combine the two. Can you take what Swiss does and put it into Infinite Campus so that we're not spending countless hours essentially just putting from one into the other? And it sounds like that's something that Jeff can do, and it's something that Infinite Campus is capable of doing. So I'm excited to move forward with that, and it'll save a lot of time. The other thing in the PBIS program is our lessons and video messages. This is something that we're going to work over the summer to have presented and offered during our Monday wrap sessions during the school week. And then lastly, our incentives and our awards. We've been doing our Panther Pride Spotlight Awards once a month, and we're just going to continue to look at that. Is that what our best option is, or do we want to change up how that has been going? So those are the teams or the kind of subcategories of our PBIS program that we have. The other portion for school improvement that I want to talk about is our Solution Focus team. This meets twice a month, and they primarily work with the child find process. And by child find, I mean students who will be referred to special education testing, students who should be referred or the possibility of having a 504 accommodations for them. We also talk about some academic interventions that could work in the classroom, the mainstream classroom, and then talk about some behavioral interventions that could work as well. And I had noted on there, I am for behavioral. Good behavioral interventions are very difficult to find. IM4 is a research-based behavioral program that's offered through the University of Minnesota, and we've actually had the opportunity this year to buy a subscription of that, and that has worked very well. And one of the reasons that the Solution Focus team is so important is the amount of cross-subsidy money that's spent between special education and our general education budget. And if we can identify these students early with either academic or behavioral interventions and address them without having them go down the special education route, it does save the district a lot of money in the long run. And then lastly, in school improvement is our high school and junior high leadership teams. We continue to meet monthly, and actually they'll probably be twice a month now at the end of the school year coming up, making sure that we have things in line and in order for next school year, which is crazy to think about already. Lastly, in the school improvement, and this is not school improvement, however, maybe morale and culture improvement, but MCA testing has been going on at the 7-12 setting, and we have a couple weeks left before we are completely done with our testing there. The next section I would like to move on to is our school and community partnerships. I've talked a lot about high school connection maps here at the board. they are all, with the exception of one, I think maybe ninth grade is at 99% complete, but the other ones are 100% complete, have at least one adult in the school that they have a connection with. Next year we will be expanding the connection maps to the junior high level, so this will be 7-12 that we'll be working for. I do find a lot of value in the connections that students have with adults at school. I do think that the relationships that they form really cause some of these students to attend. I have talked at the board meeting before that GSL has a very high attendance rate compared to the state average and compared to where it's been the last 5 years was the data that I looked at. And I attribute that 100% to the staff that we have and the amount of time that staff puts into getting to know each student on an individual basis. So I thank them. Probably not as much as I should, but I'd like to publicly thank the staff of the 712 for going out of their way to do that as well, because it is very meaningful to me and it's meaningful to the students. Moving on with the school community partnerships, the Hispanic Outreach Program, we do have a meeting scheduled on May 18th from noon to 2 at the Good Shepherd Lutheran Church. So there'll be more information that'll come from that. And then also our Olveus programming. This is our anti-bullying program that we deliver once a month. We will be looking to pair our Olveus anti-bullying program with our PBIS lessons in the 2019-2020 school year. And then the very last thing that I did not have on there, but I will draw attention to as far as school and community partnerships, is we held our ACT testing for our juniors on April 2nd. We had 72 individuals test, and due to some scheduling conflicts, we had to change our venue this year, and it was held at St. Pius. And they were very accommodating, and it went off without a hitch, so I would like to thank St. Pius. With that being said, do you guys have any questions for me?
Matt, when you do the junior high connection maps, do you think that it's going to be difficult early on to have the 7th graders and the staff members sort of having that connection because they're new in that transition from Lakeside in 6th grade to 7th grade in junior high? Did you see that type of I don't want to say disconnect, but that type of a difficulty with the freshmen in 9th grade? I'm kind of assuming not, maybe because of some overlap of staff of 7th and 8th grade and some of those things with the freshmen, but I guess I just kind of wonder about the 7th graders coming over, and maybe the 7th graders, the type of focus needed there is making those connections or finding out that many maybe do not have the connections, so kind of almost redirecting the focus of the staff on how do we get those generated because of, like I said, that transition from Lakeside in 6th to 7th at the junior high.
I do think that will be a challenge, and for many of the reasons that you just listed, of they just haven't had the exposure to staff that a senior would have, and that's why we see in our 9th grade connection map, that's the only one right now that's not at 100%, and it's because 9th graders haven't had as many connections with staff as seniors have had. But it's interesting that you bring up the point of working with staff as far as, how do you make those connections? And, there's no, that I'm aware of, research-based intervention. This is what you do to make a connection with a kid. But it is something that we spend a lot of time with. And I know we have some of our high school staff here that could probably attest to the staff meetings that I hold. And I draw a lot of attention to that. As a matter of fact, we had a junior high staff meeting probably 2 months ago. And we discussed a lot of things. And at the end of it, one of the teachers asked me, well, Mr. Foss, what do you want from this? What do you want to come from this when we're dealing with students? And my response isn't measurable on an MCA test, and it's not measurable on an ACT test, and it's not measurable on a report card, but my response back to the student was, or to the staff was, I want you to care about the student. I want you to care about the child, and then the grades and the scores will follow. And that's just my philosophy. That's been my philosophy since I came here, was we need to meet some basic needs first. And that's, are you cared for? Do you have everything that you need? When those things are in place, that's when education can take part. And that's why I continue to talk about these connection maps, because we are going to continue to struggle academically until we have those connections. And we're not struggling academically. I don't want to send that message here either, but until we get 100% connection on every one of those 712, we are going to see kind of the results that we've had. And I firmly believe that when we make those connections and intrinsically motivate these kids to want to be in school and want to learn, that's when we're going to start to see some really fantastic things happen.
Yeah, I want to compliment you and the staff as well for just that, the proactive approach, and not backing away, not shying away, not alarming or throwing up red flags where they're not needed, but like I said, being very proactive and aware, and the other positives will definitely follow. So thank you to you as well as the staff for approaching this and continuing to connect and make those connections and stuff. So thank you. Any other questions or comments by board?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foss. Mr. Sandru, Superintendent Report.
Thank you and good evening. I have most of my stuff is also on the agenda for tonight, but one of the things that I wanted to update, and I did give the board just a sheet on the school schedule in terms of the mate. You know, you talked a little bit earlier about the missed school days. And then just our plan. We're executing our plan that we talked about with the from March, the March board meeting. Unfortunately, last week there was even some more early dismissals and late starts, and then even a closure that we had to implement, and we had a plan for that. But you've heard the governor talk a little bit about how those can be relieved and utilized and that type of stuff. This plan basically addresses that, unless you guys change the plan, if that makes sense. It's forgiving school districts to not have to meet their hours, but the plan that we have in place, we're making up those times, and we're following contracts, and we're making it work. And so I just wanted to kind of update you guys a little bit on where things are at this point in time. I know that there's been a little bit of concern with some of our 284s, because 284 employees and their hourly rate opportunities to work, because we've had some missed school, and this plan allows us to address some of that as best that we can. Obviously, with some of the 2-hour late starts and the early dismissals, it gets very difficult, you know, 2 hours at a time or an hour and a half, depending on when they come in. When you add it all up, it gets to be somewhat of a bigger number, but you know, I don't know exactly how to address that issue with that without doing just what we're doing. And so if anybody has any questions on that plan, just let me know and where we're at. And if there's another snow day and we have a closure, we have decided that that will be put on at the beginning of the year, school year, as another workshop day. So if that does happen, we have a plan in place for that. If there's 2 more snow days, we go back to the drawing board. So I'm not sure what we'll be doing with that, but let's hope that that doesn't happen. With that plan, as you guys are well aware, just an update, we do have school on April 18th, and we do have school on April 22nd, which is this Thursday and Monday. So I do appreciate the staff, the families, the parents, everyone for you know, making those days work and getting our school days in as best that we can. We're also, just an update with the parking lot, some of the logistics and things like that, you know, as we keep moving forward with that process, please know that we have been talking a little bit about where do you park, where do you go, how do you do all that kind of stuff, and we'll be getting that communication out to our staff, getting that communication out to the families, because June and July is going to be very busy, and when you start thinking about all the activities during the summer and how the flow of traffic is going to work, we are working on some of those things, and specifically and how things are going to work. You know, obviously the Lincoln parking lot is going to be a busy place. We've been working with the city of Glencoe to say what can we do on the streets, because they do have some no parking stuff. Things like that we're going to have to work, because as you start putting things down, you know, a lot of times people think it's the summer, but when you start putting it on paper about all the different things that are still happening during the summer, it gets to be a really busy place. And when you take away that parking lot, you really start to learn how compact we're going to become here for June and July. But in the end, it's going to be worth it. With that said, as I mentioned last month, we have a mock crash coming up here on the 16th of May. Community schools will be coming up on May 2nd. We do have our celebration day coming on May 25th. And then also, just to let you guys know and the public know, we do have negotiations starting very soon with our collective bargaining groups. A date has not been officially set with the principals and the local 284, but May 1st at 7 o'clock is the first date that we do meet with our teachers union to start the negotiations process. So we'll be talking a little bit about that at the end of the meeting as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Committee reports. Are there any committee reports at this time?
I met with the Lakeside site team March 19th, and a lot of discussion was talked about with scheduling and lunches and recess and just how to work with that. And there was a lot of stuff talked about, but I can't say it all. But thank you for having me.
Any other committee reports?
Yep. So I met with Lincoln Elementary on March 21st. A lot of routine stuff talked about looking ahead into next year, discussing, getting ready to discuss placements and everything for next year. Like Jason said, a lot of stuff discussed, looking into our summer school, some discussions about that, or but yeah, other than that, they're already, looking forward to 2019, 2020, getting ready for that school year. So,
any other committee reports? 2 weeks ago, I was able to go into each of the sites as well and visit classrooms and with staff and students. And so I'd like to once again thank each of the building administrators as well as the staff of teachers that welcomed me into each of the sites or each of the buildings in our school district. And once again, it was fun to see a lot of the learning taking place in the classrooms, a lot of those relationships that we mentioned that are happening each and every day that many times we just sort of take for granted, perhaps, and we shouldn't take those for granted, but it's fun to see them in action. It's fun to see the learning taking place and just the excitement and stuff. So I'd like to also thank each of the sites for welcoming me into their classrooms and into their buildings. Anything else, anybody? All right. With that being said, I'm looking for approval of the agenda with as an action item. Please note that there is an addendum to our agenda. We have an item L and an item M added, which would bump the old item L to be N, miscellaneous. With that being said, I'll entertain a motion at this time.
I so move.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion by Jason I have a motion by John and a second by Jason to approve the agenda with the addendums as noted. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Approved consent agenda action item enclosure number 1. Please note that there is also an addendum to the consent agenda. With that being said, I'll entertain a motion at this time. And is there a second? I'll make that second. Any question? I have a motion by Alicia and a second by Jamie to approve the consent agenda. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. Motion carries. Old business, there's no old business at this time, so we'll go into new business. Item A, resolution relating to property tax abatement for parking lot projects. Granting the abatement, roll call vote, enclosure number 2. The district has proposed to finance the parking lot improvements by granting abatement bonds. The district conducted a public hearing on April 15th, 2019 at 6:30, that was earlier this evening, on the desirability of granting the proposed property tax abatement. The granting of the proposed property tax abatement is in the public interest because it will finance and provide public infrastructure and help provide access to services for residents of the district. The project includes the construction improvements of the Glencoe-Silver Lake Junior Senior High School and Lakeside Elementary School parking lots, parking lot maintenance, and improvements district-wide and related financing costs, which will enable district residents to continue to conveniently and safely access these facilities, which are regularly utilized by the public for school and community events. Is there a motion? Is there a second? I have a motion by Kevin and a second by Donna to approve the granting of the tax abatement. It will be a roll call vote. Are there any questions or comments or any additional information that needs to be shared before we take the roll call? Yes, thank you for doing that. Any other questions or comments?
I'll just add that publicly, and we'll try to reiterate this to the public, we're doing the best we can on the parking lot right now. It's awful. And Brady and his crew are trying to keep it as smooth as they possibly can, but you just need to really be careful and drive, because especially when you're coming in this area, there are major potholes, and they're keeping it in as best that they can. So people always ask, what are you doing in the meantime? Can you do something in the meantime to kind of get us to June? And the answer is not a lot, especially because we're not going to spend any money on it. And that even goes up to Lakeside. I know that Mr. Foss might kind of help us out a little bit with trying to level that parking lot out, but in terms of putting dollars into that to get us by until June, we're going to try to save our money as best that we can and do what we can. So I just appreciate people with their patience, because both of them just really need to get done, and it's going to happen, thankfully, here in June.
I guess with Brady and his crew not filling the potholes, at least we're not having to do the speed bumps out there. So
that's correct.
That is part.
It does help. Although every once in a while when I stand out there, we still have a few speed burners, but we slow them down as best that we can.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, Alicia, will you please help with the roll call vote?
Jamie?
4.
Kevin?
4.
John?
4.
Jason?
4.
Myself, 4. And Donna?
4.
Thank you, Alicia. Item B, so motion passes. Item B, resolution providing for safe and general obligation tax sale of general obligation tax abatement bonds, Series 2019A, and coveting and obligating the district to be bound by and to use the provisions of Minnesota Statute Section 126C.55 to guarantee the payment of the principal and interest on these bonds. Roll call vote will be needed. This is enclosure number 3. The board has determined that it is necessary to be expedient to issue $1,180,000 $80,000 in general obligation tax abatement bonds to finance the parking lot construction at the Glencoe-Silver Lake School campus in Glencoe and the Lakeside Elementary campus in Silver Lake. The district has retained Ehlers and Associates Incorporated as its independent municipal advisor for the bonds. The district has also applied for the credit enhancement program provided by the Minnesota Department of Education in the event of a potential default in the payment of principal and interest on bonds. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
And is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Jason and a second by John. Move to approve the adoption of the above-mentioned resolution. Any questions or comments? Any additional information? When you go to sell the bonds, how do you go about advertising that?
It's a system that we call parity. It's actually part of the industry. The underwriters out there all watch for it. We post it out on parity, and it's a competitive bid process.
Okay, so local banks and so forth will have that opportunity to bid on those bonds by watching for that advertisement, if you will, for it.
Yeah, local banks can either choose to participate by themselves, or they're generally affiliated with United Bank Bank, and basically that's the bank's bank, and they are underwriting. They have an underwriting desk, so they can actually work directly with them if they don't have possibly they might need a little help putting together a bid, or they want to work with them for a collection of local banks. They have that choice.
Okay, cool, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, this will be a roll call vote. Alicia, will you please help with that?
Jamie?
4.
Kevin? 4. John?
4.
Jason?
4.
Myself, 4. And Donna.
All right, motion carries. Item C, health insurance bids, action item enclosure number 4. The District Insurance Committee met on March 27, 2019 to review the bids that were received for the district group health insurance as part of the required HITI bid process. 3 bids were received. The committee approved to accept the bid from Southwest West Central Service Cooperative, utilizing Blue Cross Blue Shield as the network provider, and recommends to the school board to accept their bid. The bid reflects a 10% decrease in premium for the 2019-2020 school year. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion by John and a second by Donna to accept the health insurance bid from Southwest West Central Service Cooperative for the 2019-2000 school year. Questions or comments or additional information?
Yep, just a little follow-up from our insurance meeting. As you read, we met on the 27th. We have a combination staff that serves on that committee. It's a couple of certified members, non-certified members, Pam and payroll and myself. John Lemke kind of met via phone because he wasn't able to make the meeting, but he had all the information regarding that meeting. It's not very often we get to have a meeting and get a 10% decrease in premium, so it was kind of a nice meeting to have and discuss our plans. The purpose of the committee is to reach out to their peers, other staff members, take any of their concerns that they have with any of our insurance programs, not just health, but if there's questions or concerns about dental, vision, long-term disability, we look at all of those different programs and discuss them. If there's some things we can change, make improvements on. So the committee unanimously moved ahead to accept the bid from the co-op. Like Jamie read, we did receive bids from PEEP and also a direct bid from Blue Cross Blue Shield. The service cooperative had the 10% decrease compared to our current premium, so they were the low bid. One exception was our $5,000 deductible plan on the family policy. PEEP was a little bit lower, about $5 lower on their bid, but overall the bids were lowest from Southwest West Central Service Cooperative, so we are recommending that bid. The only program change that we're making, or plan change for the better, currently our $5,000, $10,000 plan has the HSA deductible part of that, but that plan did not have fourth quarter carryover. Our other two plans that we offer have the fourth quarter carryover. So the $2,000, $4,000 plan, and then our $3,375 plan with the HSA has the fourth quarter carryover. So we reached back out to our agent, and they went to the co-op and to the underwriters, and for a very small premium change, actually it was about a $4 change to the single and $11 change to the family, we're able to add that fourth quarter carryover to that plan, and that's a huge benefit to people that are on that plan. The committee unanimously agreed to accept that change from the cooperative to add that fourth quarter carryover so that all our plans are consistent. So fourth quarter carryover, if you don't aren't familiar with that, if you have a medical issue that happens in November, December, say you have a broken leg and you're still taking treatments, you're still going to the doctor, you need therapy, and that carries over into January, maybe February. Without that fourth quarter carryover, you get to January 1st, you've got to reach your deductible again. And when you have a $5,000 or a $10,000 deductible plan, that's kind of a steep thing to deal with come January 1st when you're dealing with the same medical issue. So we thought this was a great opportunity to make that plan change. So we're recommending that plan change and then accepting the bids from the Southwest West Central Service Cooperative.
And Michelle, we've been now doing this for how many years, and this is the first time there's ever been a decrease.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a welcome sight that doesn't happen very often.
We've had some years where we've had a 0% where we've been stable, but I've never seen this. A lot of this is attributed to our claims. That's how the bidding kind of works. They look at all our previous claims for the last about 2 years, and they compile that data. So a lot of it goes back to staff and how claims are utilized. There's a lot of number of things that nobody can control when you have a medical issue that comes up. But another big part of that is staff being aware. Our wellness program, I think, is very active in making staff aware of some health things, taking care of themselves by being part of that wellness and making that a priority. And then also just becoming more educated on health insurance in general and what the plans entail. So it's an educational piece that we've been working hard on from a committee standpoint, and nobody likes paying those insurance premiums, but we're doing the best that we can and making sure we have a good plan to offer our staff.
Do you think having PEEP put in a bid also impacts the overall sort of competition, or I guess just having more bids in and PEEP being one more, does that help with the overall numbers, do you think?
Well, I think anytime you bid anything, no matter what it is, everybody knows you're bidding it, so they're going to sharpen that pencil just that much more. So I think it does play a factor in there. We've been down the PEEP road before. I don't remember if it was the first year that we bid and had to bid, mandatory bid, and PEEP was, kind of right in there. And PEEP is a program that works for some school districts and organizations. It just hasn't been a fit for our district and the committee. It's a complicated program of the way it's set up with their networks, and it just hasn't fit right for us. But I think that does play a little effect into it. But in this case, when I talked with our agent too, and he was at the committee meeting, the claims definitely here came in, and you could see that even by the PEEP bids. They were down too. So.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you for that information, Michelle. Anything else from board? Hearing none, I had a motion by John, and a second by Donna, so thank you for that. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying no. Motion carries. Item D, reduction of positions. Action item. Superintendent Sanju recommends reductions of the following positions at the end of the 2018-2019 school year as part of the 2019-2020 school plan. 0.5 FTE junior high general music, 0.2 FTE high school industrial tech. Is there a motion? Second call for, is there a motion? Is there a second? Second call for, is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion by Kevin and a second by Jason to approve the reductions as listed. Questions, comments, information?
One of the comments I'd like to make is, I'm going with my head instead of my heart. My heart is saying, because music has been important to me. I was in band and choir all through school. I'm still involved in music, in church and things like that, so it's really hard for me to go with this. But again, my head is telling me what the right thing, my heart is telling me which way to go, but my head's telling me that it's right to accept this. And you guys did a great job, presenting tonight. And if we could, if we had the money to keep everything going the way we should, of course, not passing the operating levy referendum hurt us. I think it shows us just how important it's going to be to pass it this November, because this is hard enough for me right now, and if we don't pass that other one in November, I don't even want to think about how hard some of those cuts are going to be, because there isn't going to be anything that's going to be easy. So, like I said, my head tells me one thing, my heart tells me something else.
I would like to take a few moments. I've done a lot of homework on this. I've spent a lot of time, maybe with administrative teams, and understood their point of view and how everything was come and logically and everything. I met with, had a phone conversation with Michelle on the financial end to make sure that I completely understood all the financial ramifications, how we were going to place this and that. I met with Matt and Dan today on the scheduling side, and they went through the scheduling with the student-driven schedule, and how that reflects at the high school versus how that reflects at the junior high level. And then I also met with the music department, and I want to thank you for your time. Philosophically, I have a hard time with this because music has been part of my life, and you either lead with your head or your heart, and I guess I'm going to probably lean on the other side of Kevin on this, just because philosophically, music, from when we drove down to my parents or grandparents, we listened to the old time music, to the polkas and the waltzes, all the way down to Winthrop and back. We listened to, when you come up, I was involved in piano lessons, band and choir, like Kevin said, and had the times of our lives. My boys and daughter going through piano lessons, my kids participating in band and choir, and my middle son, of course. I have to give 100% credit to Kay, because that poor kid can't hold a note to save his soul. And if you're watching, Paul, I apologize, but I'm saying the truth. And my hats off to you, Kay. I don't know how you managed it, but he had a blast. He also had a blast. And I watch the kids and watch people. When you get on an airplane, when you get in, everyone has earbuds in. Music is part of their core. music goes, it's part of our culture here at in the United States. And basic music is an understanding of music, just the little principles. I mean, when I look back, did I enjoy listening or going to English class and learning about Napoleon Bonaparte, or reading, having to read for crying out loud? I call it Les Miserables, but it was Les Miserables or something. And I know, Kate, you were going to do something this year on that book. I'm sorry. But there's things in life where, you know, sometimes we expose kids to things that they're not necessarily going to take part in, but at least they'll have a little appreciation to how much effort and time people put in to doing the stuff that they do. I have a whole thing here. And last thing I guess I'd like to say is, you know, us as a GSL community, we get these kids at preschool and kindergarten, these little kids, and we take these kids and we're trying to give them direction. We're trying to give them insight so that 6 weeks from now we have graduation. We pray to gosh that we have these kids and we give them to be productive members of our society. And I can't reiterate what you mentioned, Kay, about the self-esteem and the self-value and everything that these kids have. And I know that we're keeping band and choir, but general music, once in a while, I think it's an important part of a curriculum. So, thank you.
I'm just going to say something quick too. I'm just going to thank you guys for all the work and effort that you do put into your program. And it's very apparent that it is part of you. It's your passion. It was a hard decision. I have 2 kids who are in choir. My son, who I kind of had to give him that nudge to try it out, but he's loving it. It's a new thing for him that he's very much a sports kid and your boy, and it was something that giving him that nudge and him experiencing it and having Kay as the teacher, you've brought out something new for him, and he's looking forward to doing it again next year, even though you won't be here. So it is very important. It's a hard decision. I don't think any of us ever want to have to make a cut. I spent a lot of time reviewing your letters and going over just looking at the financial aspects of it, asking questions, and sometimes it comes down to the dollars and cents, and I hate to have to say that, but we do have to make sure that we are staying as a function, we're staying where we have, as a district or as a board, have wants to keep our funds at, so that we don't have to, especially with the referendum coming up. I mean, we may have other cuts that we have to deal with if we don't get that passed either. So we kind of have to look at it all around. So thank you guys again for everything that you do for our students and put into our music and our arts program.
Any other questions or comments?
I just want to thank all the teachers for their passion, what they do, and I've got children that are being taught by them right now, and it doesn't make any of this any easier. But to piggyback on what Kevin said too, I mean, it's going to be a tough time in November if this doesn't all work out down the road. Doesn't make this one any easier. It's going to make down the road a lot harder. So hopefully everybody's listening and knows that this is going to get worse if things don't change in November. So thank you again all for your letters and what you do.
I'd like to thank you each as well. Once again, this is difficult because if it was just simply based upon availability, options, and so forth to students, this is obviously, as you heard, an integral part to many of us here on the board as former students. It's difficult as board members now to once again look at each of these programs that were so huge in shaping who we are, not only as leaders here on the board, but also just who we are as people in general. It's difficult. It's a difficult decision because there's always going to be a list, and there's always going to be something on that list, and the things that are on that list are always going to be things that shape our students here at GSL, whether it's the people before you right here or the individuals that are not here before you, but that are in the halls day in and day out here at GSL. And that's the difficult part of this, you know, to make the dollars and cents stretch to where they need to be able to stretch to cover all of the things that help us to be who we are, to reach those students that may not be the athletic students, that may be the students that are not involved in athletics or the fine arts for that matter, is always a challenge by all school districts to reach all students and to try to find their strengths, to try to find their passions before they know what their strengths are or what their passions are. And that's difficult to do. And I think GSL works really, really hard, as do other districts, to try to find those gifts and talents that all students have but may not have found yet themselves, or may not know that they even possess until they're exposed to classes like these that are already on the list, and classes and things that have been on the lists of past. So, you know, once again, like I said, this is very, very difficult, but from the financial standpoint, we have to make some decisions, and we have to be able to move forward. We have the operating referendum that is going to be, once again, before the public very, very shortly in some format. And we're going to be asking for the support in passage of that, so that, once again, we are not adding to the list of reductions. Another difficult piece that we as a board and as a district always face as well is when things are reduced, to try to bring them back in some form or at some time. One thing that this board and the previous board has done in passing the previous referendum, you know, X amount of years ago, was coming out of statutory operating debt and attempting to add back some of the things that were cut at that time. Not an easy thing to do, and obviously we weren't able to bring back absolutely everything that was cut and everything that was lost in the same format and things that were in the past. But that's always an attempt, that's always a hope, it's always a desire, sometimes successful and sometimes not. But once again, it can only be even thought of or attempted if the public is in support of those things, and the way that the public is asked, and the way that the public is asked to show that support is in the passage of referendums. So we will be, like I said, in some format, going back to the public in the very near future, asking them for their support in our school programming. So thank you for all that you do each and every day, and that you've done for each of us, that have been in your classrooms, that have been exposed to your expertise. We can't thank you enough. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I have a motion by Kevin and a second by Jason to approve the reductions as listed. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no.
No.
Okay, the motion passes 4-2. Item E, terminations and renewals, action item. It is the recommendation of Superintendent Sanju to terminate and non-renew the following probationary teachers because of budget reductions. Randy Wilson, 1.0 FTE Industrial Tech. Michelle Downey, 0.5 FTE Junior High General Music. It is a recommendation of the superintendent to terminate and non-renew the following probationary teachers because they are on a one-year variance. We have Amy Metcalf, 1.0 FTE Early Childhood Special Education Teacher at the Early Childhood Learning Center. Monica Rayco, 1.0 FTE Early Childhood Special Education Teacher. And Taylor Jones, 0.2 FTE High School Health. Each motion is to be adopted by majority roll call vote. I'll entertain a motion at this time for the first one that I listed. And is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Alicia, seconded by Jason, to terminate and non-renew Randy Wilson, 1.0 FTE at the end of the 2018-2019 school year. It will be a roll call. If you could please assist with that, Alicia, I'd appreciate that.
Can I just make a quick comment? You notice that it's a 0.2 reduction in industrial tech, but then Randy Wilson's position is a 1.0. But the reason for that is that he is on a Tier 1 license. And so you have to go through that process because it's a Tier 1 license.
So in coming back then?
He would have an opportunity to come back with that.
With a Tier 1 licensure again, or a different
it could be a Tier 1 licensure if you don't have a qualified candidate that is licensed.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
And we're very grateful for him, by the way, just so you know, with all the work that he's done with that. So,
Alicia, go ahead.
Okay, Jason?
4.
Donna? Jamie?
4.
Kevin?
4.
John?
4.
Myself, 4.
Okay, thank you. I'll entertain a motion for the second reduction that was on the list.
I'll make that motion.
And is there a second? I have a motion by Jason and a second by Kevin to terminate and non-renew Michelle Downey, 0.5 FTE at the end of the 2018-2019 school year. Questions or comments? Hearing none, Alicia, I'll have you help us with a roll call vote.
Kevin?
4.
Jason?
4.
Jamie?
4.
Donna? John?
Against?
Me, 4.
Okay, motion carries. We'd also like to thank Michelle for her work as well, and once again the great work that she did for GSL and for the music program. I'll entertain a motion for the next one on the list.
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Kevin and a second by Jason to terminate and non-renew Amy Metcalf, 1.0 FTE at the end of the 2018-2019 school year. Questions or comments? Hearing none. Alicia, if you could assist with that roll call, please.
Kevin?
4.
Jason?
4.
Jamie?
4.
Donna? John?
4.
And myself, 4.
Okay. Motion carried. Thank you.
And I should have probably pointed out to that just so that you know these are variances, and so you have to go through this process because they're under a variance. And they have a very good opportunity to have their job back, but it's just the process that has to happen. So
I'll entertain a motion for the next one on the list.
So moved.
Is there a second? I have a motion by Jason and a second by Alicia to terminate and non-renew Monica Ryko 1.0 FTE at the end of the 2018-2019 school year. Questions or comments?
Chris, with all these last three or whatever, they all are on variance, correct? And that's possible that...
Correct, and it's just because they aren't fully licensed. They're on a variance, and again, we did this last year. They get that opportunity to continue to go, and school districts are doing this all over the state of Minnesota because they're trying to find teachers. All these teachers are doing a great job for us, but they're not licensed, so that we go through the process then of filing a variance so that they can legally teach. And that's good for that school year, and then once the school year ends, you got to go through this process, and you got to post, and you got to say, hey, who is out there? Chances are you're not going to find anybody, which is why they're under variance in the first place. And then you go through that process again, and they get licensed again for the year.
And these three are all working on their programs? It's not like
Yeah, eventually.
And we thought Taylor was probably done. Doesn't have his final grades at this point.
Yeah,
So they're all working on their program.
yeah, he hasn't given us a piece of paper from the state of Minnesota that says I'm licensed to teach health, which is just a teeny little part of his job. But okay.
Not hearing any other questions or comments, could you please assist with that one as to Alicia?
Yes. Kevin? Jason?
4.
Jamie?
4.
Donna? John?
4.
Myself? 4.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. I'm looking for a motion for the last one on the list.
So moved.
And is there a second? I have a motion by John and a second by Jason to terminate and non-renew Taylor Jones 2.2 FTE at the end of the 2018-2019 school year. Questions or comments? Hearing none. Alicia, could you please assist with the last roll call vote?
Yes.
Thank
Kevin?
you.
Jason?
4.
Jamie?
4.
Donna? John?
4.
Myself? 4.
Motion carries. Thank you for your help, Alicia. Item F, designation of identified official with authority. Action item. Superintendent Sanju recommends designating Business Manager Sander as an official Iowa authorization designee. The Minnesota Department of Education recommends having 2 people in the district office with this capability. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion by John and a second by Kevin to approve the designation of business manager as an authorized Iowa designee. Questions or comments?
Do you guys have questions on this? Basically, what this will allow is district office personnel, even some of our secretaries, even some people from Southwest West Central to enter data into the system for MDE. I have to give approval for them, and as I was going through the process of this, because they changed the approval for them, one of the ladies at the MDE says, you need to also get somebody else to do this, so it's not just you doing it. And typically a lot of districts will utilize their business manager to do this. So in order for us to take that next step, they said we have to have our board give us approval that you're okay with doing it too. So that's what we're doing here.
You don't have enough to do. Okay.
As long as you remain a Gopher fan, you're okay.
Yeah, here you go.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Item G, close-up request for 2019-2020 action item, enclosure number 5. Close-up coordinator Paul Lemke asks for approval of the 2019-2020 close-up trip to Washington, D.C. The trip dates will be March 8th through the 13th, 2020. The participants in the program will cover all costs through private funds, fundraisers, or donations. Superintendent Sanju recommends approval of the trip. Is there a motion? Is there a second? I have a motion by Don and a second by Alicia to approve the close-up trip to Washington, D.C. during the 2019-2020 school year. The dates for the trip will be March 8th through the 13th, 2020. Questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Item H, coffee sale fundraiser for National BPA Trip, action item enclosure number 6. Sharice Akins of the Business Professionals of America, BPA Club, would like to hold a fundraiser for the trip. They would like to sell Hovey Valley coffee traders. They are hoping to raise $500 to help cover costs for the national trip to California. Superintendent Sanju and High School Principal Foss recommend approval of this request. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? I have a motion by Kevin and a second by Donna to approve the BPA fundraiser to sell Hovey Valley coffee traders. Questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Item I, first reading of policies, action item. It is a recommendation of the Policy Committee to bring back the following policies for adoption at the next school board meeting. 421, gifts to employees and school board members. 504, student dress and appearance. 535, unpaid meal charges. 620, credit for learning. 707, transportation of public school students. The other ones that were listed there are part of the second reading. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion by John and a second by Kevin to bring back the policies listed above for adoption at the next school board meeting. Questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Item J, second reading of policies, action item. The following policies received their first reading at the March 11th school board meeting. It is a recommendation of the Policy Committee, Directors Lemke and Lockhart, and the Superintendent of Schools to adopt these policies. You can see that they are listed there as the second reading. Some of those that were listed under I, you can see are listed under J because it is the second reading of those. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion by John and a second by Jason to adopt the policies listed above. Questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Item K, resolution to accept donations. It is the recommendation of Superintendent Sanju to adopt the resolution to accept donations. Is there a motion? And is there a second? I have a motion by Alicia and a second by Jason to accept the donations as listed there. Questions or comments? Thank you to each of those organizations and individuals for their donations to our district. And once again, you can see the designated areas that they are supporting. So thank you for that in advance. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Thank you. Item L, closed session meeting to discuss negotiation strategy. It's an action item. The purpose of this is, like it mentions there, to discuss negotiation strategy. Is there a motion? And is there a second? All right. I have a motion by Jason and a second by Alicia to close the meeting at 8:36 p.m. in order to discuss negotiation strategies. Questions or comments? We'll be closing the session for or the meeting to discuss the negotiation strategy. We won't have a comment after we reopen the meeting. Is there any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Okay. The meeting is closed then at this time. Motion